Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. No one on set would ever forget the way the sky looked that evening. A soft, theatrical lavender melting into warm gold, as if even the heavens knew this night would be different. The wind moved gently through the towering trees surrounding the lakeside estate, brushing against the lanterns that had been purposefully dimmed to create the illusion of moonlit magic. Peg Munson stood at the edge of the platform, her hands clasped lightly in front of her, heart pounding like she was 20 again, not 72. Her rose-colored gown shimmered under the lights, catching glints of silver like the first shine of morning frost. She had chosen this dress for one reason. It made her feel alive, hopeful, ready. And Mel Owens, the man who had stirred something in her she didn't think she'd ever feel again, was somewhere behind those walls preparing for the biggest moment of his life. Peg exhaled, a tremble mixed with anticipation and disbelief, thinking back on the long, winding journey that had brought her to this moment. The laughter, the quiet talks near fireplaces, the heartbreak she feared she'd feel at the end, the joy she dared to imagine. She whispered to herself, "No matter what happens tonight, I'm grateful." But deep down, she prayed that the man whose smile warmed her more than sunlight would step onto that platform and choose her. Inside the estate, Mel Owens was pacing. He had paced so long his Apple Watch was probably sending alerts asking if he intended to walk to the next state. 74 years old, a widower, a retired school principal who still, at times, forgot which room he left his glasses in. He never expected to be standing under TV lights, sweating through a designer suit, rehearsing the most vulnerable speech he'd given since proposing to his late wife decades earlier. But Mel had learned something through this journey, something stunning in its simplicity. Love doesn't care about age. Love doesn't expire with time. Love blooms when the heart is brave enough to let it. As producers hovered outside the door, whispering instructions into earpieces, Mel stopped pacing. He inhaled deeply, and for a moment Peg's laughter echoed in his memory. Soft, melodic, warming. He knew. He had known since the second week, when she had pulled him aside, touched him arm gently, and whispered, "If you ever get tired of pretending to be calm on camera, just sit next to me. I promise I'll distract you." He chuckled at the memory. Peg had saved him that day, and so many days after. He wasn't choosing her tonight. He had chosen her weeks ago. Peg heard the footsteps before she saw him. Her heartbeat stuttered, then jumped into something fluttery and wild. There he was, Mel Owens, in a charcoal suit that made him look like a handsome silver-haired James Bond, if James Bond sometimes forgot where he left his car keys, but Peg found that even more endearing. Mel paused several steps away, staring at her with a softness that made her breath catch. "Hi, Peg," he said, his voice low and warm. Peg smiled. "Hi, Mel." The intimacy of the moment was so thick, it felt like a blanket wrapping them together. Camera crews faded into the background, producers held still, even the wind paused, as if nature itself didn't dare interrupt. Peg studied herself, repeating silently, "Whatever happens, you'll be okay." But when Mel reached into his pocket, her knees nearly gave out. He held something close to his heart, the final golden rose. Mel exhaled sharply, his voice wobbling as he began. "Peg?" He swallowed hard. "I had a whole speech planned. They even wrote cue cards in case I forgot my words, but I don't want that. I want you to hear exactly what's in my heart." Peg blinked rapidly, willing herself not to cry. "When I came here," Mel continued, "I didn't think love like this was possible again. I thought my story was done. I thought I'd lived the best parts already." His voice cracked. "But then you walked in with that spark in your eyes, calling me handsome the first moment we met, even though I had food on my shirt." Peg laughed through her tears. "It was charming." Mel stepped closer. Peg Munson, you made me feel seen again. You made me feel understood. You made me feel worth choosing. And I haven't felt that in years. A tear rolled down Peg's cheek. I don't want a life without your laughter. I don't want a morning without your good-humored sarcasm. And Peg, I don't want a future without you. Gasps rippled through the crew. Peg covered her trembling mouth. I choose you, Mel said, his voice thick with emotion. Today, tomorrow, for however many years we have left, I choose you with all my heart. He extended the final golden rose toward her. Peg, will you accept this rose? Peg inhaled shakily, staring at the rose like it held the sun itself. She looked up at Mel, at the man who had turned her world into a sunrise again, and for a moment she couldn't speak. Finally, with tears cascading freely, she whispered, Mel Owens! You brought me back to life. She reached forward, touching the rose with trembling fingers. I accept your rose and your heart. Mel broke, his face crumpling with joy and relief. He pulled her into the warmest, most sincere embrace reality TV had ever captured. Peg held on to him like she never let go. The camera zoomed in, producers wiped their eyes discreetly. Viewers at home would soon be sobbing into their pillows. But Mel and Peg, they were simply two souls rediscovering love, not as kids, not as dreamers, but as survivors, as believers, as partners. Once the final scene wrapped and cheers erupted, Peg gently tugged Mel's sleeve. Walk with me? She asked. Mel nodded, smiling softly. They wandered toward the lakeshore, away from the lights, walking so close their hands brushed, and when their fingers intertwined, Peg felt her entire world fall into place. They stopped beneath a willow tree. Mel turned to her. I meant every word, he said quietly, every single one. Peg touched his cheek. So did I. He leaned his forehead against hers. I want us to build something real, Peg. A life, not just a TV ending. Peg nodded, her voice trembling. I want that too. Then Mel whispered words that no audience heard, words Peg would carry forever. Peg, you're my second chance at forever. When the episode aired weeks later, the internet exploded. #MelAndPeg trended for days. Clips of Mel's emotional speech hit millions of views in hours. Peg's tearful smile became the most shared screenshot of the year. People of all ages wrote messages like, love isn't over just because you get older. I want a love like Mel and Peg. They made me believe again. But the best reaction came during their live interview the next morning. The host leaned forward. Peg, Mel, what's next for you? Mel squeezed Peg's hand and said simply, we're choosing each other again, every day. Peg beamed, and the world collectively melted. A month later, Peg and Mel moved in together. They spent mornings drinking coffee on the porch, teasing each other lovingly. Afternoons, gardening, Peg planting roses, Mel pretending he knew what he was doing. Evenings, dancing slowly in the living room, their steps small, but their hearts full. One night, as Peg rested her head on Mel's chest, he murmured, thank you for saying yes. Peg smiled against him, thank you for finding me.